It's just you.
Yeah, I know.
2.3 inches of rain in 12 hours. It's a
Good.
lot of rain.
I thought I was in the Wizard of Oz last night. Like yesterday was 62, 63 degrees, beautiful. We actually, like you said, we just did what you did. We opened the window last night.
Mm-hmm.
But last night, I don't know how this doesn't qualify as a hurricane. No, I'm serious. Like, I know there's like technical things that make it like there's no eye of the storm probably as part of it, but the wind, I am shocked and surprised there are no trees down in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like
It was
all
gusty.
night long I kept expecting to hear that cracking sound and then something slamming into the house. It's even right now it's really blustery and weird, but yeah, no, it's yeah, we have a little it's a creek, but today it was a river. It was flowing really, really strongly. But yeah, it's been really weird.
Yes, it was very thankful. So I know we've talked about it, but I put those drains in my backyard last summer or whatever. So I put 3 of them in. So there's basically like low, medium, and high spots, but they're all still part of the lowest spots in the backyard, if that makes sense. Like the lowest and then second low. This was the first time the high spot one had water.
Oh, actually filled with water. Wow.
I was like, wow, I'm thankful that one's there.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, this is unusual. I would imagine, I was saying to my wife, I can't remember wind this bad.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't remember it. I mean, other than like a hurricane, they tell the hurricane stories from when I was a kid or whatever, but it's like a blizzard without snow. I don't know.
Yeah, unless you're far enough north, and then it kind of was a whatever.
Right. At least it wasn't snow, as we always say.
Anyway, speaking of the end of time, Intel announced the end game, like actual end game
for their transition, their fab transition or manufacturing process transition.
Well, no. There's the gaming end game, Like they actually announced the service. I think it's called Project Endgame, where they're gonna. It sounds like GeForce Now or whatever NVIDIA calls it, where you can rent things in the cloud and then stream hardware.
Oh, okay, so Intel's got a lot of stuff going on right now, and that one I missed that one. I didn't even see that,
Yeah.
but yeah, they had their investor meeting last night or yesterday, and look, I don't think it violates any NDA to say that PC makers announced a bunch of 12th gen stuff.
Yep.
That stuff's coming soon, and there will be announcements.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going
I believe
on.
they announced, and I have no idea what PC makers are coming to. This is just pure. I'm going to connect the dots. They announced that the laptop ARC stuff is coming first before the desktop stuff, which will be later.
Right, which is kind of weird because every generation they do desktop stuff first on the CPU side, but okay, whatever.
Well, now they're under Pat, and Pat we trust or whatever the people are chanting these days.
Yeah, I trust Pat. I think if this company is going to remain a major force in the semiconductor industry, which I believe it is, it's going to be because of what he's doing right now. I mean,
well, they're making huge investments across the country, quite literally, and around the world.
Yep. Yeah, you might have seen. It's people always blow my mind, like the lack of thinking. But AMD's market cap somehow surpassed that of Intel the other day, and if you follow earnings, you know that Intel and AMD almost don't even compare. They're in such different planets from a revenue profit perspective. AMD is a much smaller company than Intel. It's not even close. So how could this happen? I kind of tweeted about it like, this doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. In the same way that a lot of things from Wall Street just don't make any sense. And all these people are like, oh, I don't know, Intel's had a lot of management missteps, blah, blah. Yeah, that's cute. Get over your enthusiast thing about Intel. You understand this is a much bigger company. This company's growing. It's doing amazingly well. Like, what are you talking about? And the reason is because of those investments you just mentioned, right? I think this is sending shockwaves through the community or whatever you want to call it of people who invest in these firms because they're spending money.
Yeah,
big
money.
But this is really short-sighted, which is a great kind of Wall Street term when you think about it, because what they're doing is investing in the future. They're not just I'm sure from an investor perspective with a short-term concern, what you would rather see them do is pump that money back into their investor community or whatever. And I get that, but they wanted, Intel and AMD almost don't compete with each other. They almost aren't competitors. What Intel really competes with is TMSC. I guess Samsung a little bit. I mean, Apple is a much bigger competitor on kind of the microprocessor end, if you just look at like client systems. So they're in a different kind of plane of existence. But they are also, like I said, a much bigger company than AMD. But them making these investments is incredible. It just doesn't happen a lot. A lot of companies would just ride this out, and turn into IBM.
Yeah, that's a pretty good analogy. And right. So I think you kind of hit it where I was headed. Like, the only thing I could add to that is the reason why I think AMD's price is so high right now is that several years ago they laid out a roadmap, and they've been able to execute on that roadmap, which is very difficult to do. And so there's...
Well, just ask Intel.
Exactly. So there's a lot of positive sentiment behind AMD because the leadership team in place has the market trust that, hey, whenever they set out to do, they're capable of executing. Right now, Intel's in that sort of... Pat's came in. He's announced a huge plan. He's spending a whole bunch of money. Now let's see if they can execute. And as they begin to execute, that stock price should, as long as earnings grow.
It should explode.
Yeah.
So 2 things to know about Pat Gelsinger and also the leadership of Intel over the past several years. Pat Gelsinger was on the team that created the 386. Mm-hmm. He spearheaded the development of the 486. He was mentored by Andy Grove through his career. This guy, he saw him as an up-and-comer, and that was one of the things Andy Grove did. He located or found younger talent within the company and promoted them heavily and gave them responsibility. He played a key role in Intel's growth throughout the 1990s. When Paolo Tellini came in, Andy Grove left. Paolo Tellini did not like Pat Gelsinger, and he kind of sent him out to Siberia, whatever that is in Intel terms. And he wanted him out of the company because I think he saw him as a threat. Mm-hmm. And of course, he went to VMware, I think, right? And he was VMware, right? Yeah, VMware.
Yeah.
Paolo Tellini, just put this into perspective, is the guy that didn't get Intel chips into the iPhone and the iPad, which could have happened. And he now admits that's the biggest mistake he ever made. Apple might not have gone ARM, right? They might have gone Intel. And he's gone. And now Pat Gelsinger is back. And now this guy is, I would say, to Intel sort of what Satya Nadella is to Microsoft, which means, like it or not, this is a different company than they were before. And it's like every time someone complains about Microsoft and how they hate open source or they hate Linux or whatever, you know that they're talking about this thing from the past. And I think when people talk about Intel and how they missed all their roadmap milestones for reducing the size of their manufacturing process, et cetera, that's the old Intel, and it doesn't guarantee that it's going to be successful, right? We should be honest about that, but this is a different company. It's a different guy.
He even called out, I think, in one of his slides, Grovian culture.
He actually said,
he said it's gone, or he's trying to bring it back, sort of.
Of course. And hopefully what he'll do is what Andy Grove did, which is that thing I just described, locate talent within the company that, listen to voices that are saying, hey, that thing we're doing isn't making sense. Let's do this other thing. So it's a controversial bet. They're building fabs at a time when everyone else is going fabless and relying on third parties. But the reality is someone has to have those facilities to build these chips, and there need to be more of them, and they need to be geographically diverse. And it's expensive to build and manufacture things in the United States and in Europe, and that's where he's going. It was fascinating. I mean, so we'll see. But
I think one of the things that was missed too, and partially, I didn't even think about this. So where Intel is building their new chips is right in the backyard of GM, Ford, and all those guys who buy tons of chips.
There you go. So I wonder, it's not like guys who worked an assembly line at Ford are going to be working on an assembly line building chips. But
right.
But those guys have kind of aged out anyway. I mean, this is new jobs for a new generation in a place that historically did one thing or another. I mean, look, the steel industry in the United States, or you can pick any legacy industry that doesn't really exist anymore, propped up the economy in certain parts of the country for a long, long time, and then disappeared. And depending on, you can point to different places and say, look, these guys made a transition to some modern thing and it worked, and this place over here did not, or whatever. And this is an opportunity to do that for the car. I guess what you're saying is for the car industry, essentially, at least in that part of Ohio.
Well, it's more so that these Ford and GM and all these companies can't get enough chips to.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were going into. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's true too. Right, and now they'll be able to. Right, so now you're near where they are.
Yeah.
I mean, in other words, you're in Ohio, which is close to Detroit or whatever, where they build cars in Kentucky and wherever else.
Yeah, they build Jeeps in Toledo, and not that these plants maybe are kicking out chips for Ford and GM, but you know what? Doesn't hurt that they're within 100 miles of each other.
I honestly, that whole "Made in the USA" thing it sells really easily.
These
typically,
days. Yeah.
As it should. I mean, and it's something that we've lost, and it's not on the decline. It's gone. Like we are not a nation of builders. We're just not. And or manufacturing maybe is the right word for that. But maybe we can be again. I don't know.
Maybe we'll bring chips. I don't know. Some
Chips,
sort of dip company needs
Mr. Chips.
They need to open like a Frito-Lay cheese factory next to it so we can have chips and dip in Central Ohio.
Oh man, yeah, that's not.